Om Jnanatmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshormilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So here we are. It's been a while, but we're picking up with our reading and discussion of Śrī Upadeśāmṛta. And we have decided, because we've been out of the game for a while, decided to have an overview of the verses we've been through. In our last meeting, as some will remember, we went through the 9th verse, 9 out of 11. And so today we're going to have a brief overview, just so we, don't lose sense of the forest or the trees, as the saying goes. And we can, get some feeling for the overall message and development of Upadeśāmṛta as a whole. Because there is, as we've been emphasizing so much, there is very much a development that is being presented, stages of progress that are being discussed, and it's suitable advices for each stage that we're at. Okay, so without further ado, we're looking at verse 1. Vacho vegam, manasa kroda vegam, jiva vegam, udaro pashta vegam, etan vegan yo vishahita dira, sarvam apimam pritibim sashishyat. The urge of speech, the urges of the mind and anger, the urge of the tongue, the urges of the belly and the genitals. A perseverant person who can control all these urges can instruct the entire world. So here we are, Rupa Goswami, starting from this very human level, can say helping us have clear awareness of what is our condition, because in order to progress, we need to have awareness of where we are and what we are now, and what are all these challenges within ourselves that we are facing. And then also the importance of trying to cultivate purity and trying to practice our spiritual life with some clean platform. That's also being indicated here. We are trying to clean the temple of our heart, right? And of course, we're not expected to be perfect or to be immediately free of these things, but we want to be aware of them and aware of the fact that we ultimately want to overcome these things. And also just helps us, it helps bring us to a point of humility, right? And humble self-awareness. And that is a very valuable thing in our life of devotion, to feel genuine humility and awareness of our condition. So that's the first verse, and we can go on to the second verse. There's so much that can be said, but we're just going to have a brief overview. And we did go through all of these before, so. But yeah, that verse, it helps us with self-awareness and have a reference point, right? It's kind of like when you have a disease and you don't know, like you have all these symptoms and you don't know what they are, but then the doctor gives you a diagnosis, right? And you're like, okay, that helps, like just knowing what it is, just knowing what it is, that actually really helps give you some framework, right, for what you're dealing with, some reference point. And, like no judgment, but just, this is my condition. And it's actually very helpful. And because we know that we're actually a spirit soul and that these things are just coverings ultimately, that's also very encouraging. And we can recognize, oh, this is this covering, this is that covering, all these urges, they're coming from a superficial plane, right? Which is not touching upon my true intrinsic self. So it's also very positive from that angle of vision. Okay, so going on to verse number 2, and please feel free to chant along the verses. Atyahara prayashascha pajalpa niyamagraha janasangascha lalyancha shadbir bhaktir vinashati. So this verse is listing 6 faults, 6 qualities which will hinder our progress in devotion. Over accumulation, over collecting, right? Literally the word here, atyahara, literally it means eating too much, overeating, but it means in general the tendency to collect too much of anything, whether it's possessions, food or knowledge, whatever it may be, this tendency, it is very much a human tendency, right? The tendency to store things. Over accumulation, like nowadays quite a relevant topic is like panic buying, right? that's definitely an issue now. It's very much a human tendency. Overbuying, but then others don't have enough, right? So over accumulation, over endeavor. So putting in too much effort, endeavoring too much for something which is quite insignificant, which has no real purpose. Unnecessary talk, prajalpa. So speaking too loosely about unnecessary things, mundane subject matters with no purpose. This is also something which will hold us back. Misapplication of rules. This word niyamagraha, right, which actually has a double meaning. Niyamagraha. This word niya means rules, and then this agraha, depending on whether it's a long day or a short day, it means either to be over eager in following the rules, that is a fault, but then also to be too loose in not following the rules, that is also not helpful. So to be fixed on the rules, that has to be this, has to be that, that is missing the point. But also to completely neglect the rules and regulations, that is also not helpful. And what is the point? The real point is that the regulations given by the scriptures, they are not the end, right? The purpose is not just to follow a rule, but they have a purpose. So that purpose is to help to bring about what is already natural within us, the spirit of devotion. The rules are to help awaken that wealth within us. The purpose is love, actually. The purpose is to help us awaken our natural love for the Lord. And so we have to understand that that's the real goal of following rules and regulations, and know when to follow them more strictly, when to relax them a little bit, depending on the circumstances and the situation. So niyamagraha. Then janasangas, association with non-devotees. So putting too much faith and attachment in those who cannot support our progress in devotion. And then lalyam, fickleness, to have a fickleness, weakness of mind, right? The mind has the tendency to go this way, that way, here, there, everywhere. And so to indulge that tendency too much, this is also a fault in the line of devotion. And I'm just thinking about different ways in which persons could view these advices. And I think one thing that's important to remember is that Rupa Goswami is not writing with judgment, with the spirit of judgment or criticism, right? And and actually, like, who can actually properly follow all of these things, right? That would be a very, very rare and exalted soul. So it's not that there's a spirit of judgment here, but it's almost like, it's like Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada uses that expression, the science of devotion. And we're simply being told, this is the science of devotion. And if you indulge too much in this or that, then you're going to have this result. Just be aware of the consequences. Like if you put your finger in the fire is going to burn. I'm not criticizing you or judging you. I'm just informing you that if you do this, it will equal this, right? And it's up to you, right? So I suppose what I mean to say is the element of free will is very much there, right? Rupa Goswami is presenting this in very neutral language, actually. He's like just stating the facts. And so we can look at ourselves with some self-reflection and think, okay, yes, I have this fault. Oh, yes, I'm struggling with that one. That one, yes, I'm aware of that. I'm still, that's still something on my plate, and then so it can help us to see, why we're not dancing in Krishna Prema, why we're not melting with divine love, at this time. And welcome. I see Suvasni Ji is with us, Dhanavad, and Sulalita joined us, Somya Sham and Vijay, and also Kanakalata's joined us all the way from Sao Paulo. That's very exciting. So yeah, that's something to remember, right? It's not that, and then also another point is that we don't want to use this as an excuse to attack others, right? Oh, they have this fault or they have that fault. That's not the idea either. It's just helping us to have some self-awareness and gain some inspiration and strength to try and overcome these things, right? To leave these things behind. And if we can, then what sweetness, right? If we can leave more space in our cup, right? We can leave more space because all of these things, they're filling up our cup. So we're not able to receive the sweetness, right? Coming from above. So if we pour these things out of our cup, leave some more space to receive nectar from above, then we will taste more sweetness, more spiritual sweetness in our lives. But if our cup is full with all of these things, there's no space, right? There's no room. Right? Even our mental space also, right? We also experience, right, how we may listen to so much Harikatha, but how much is it actually like penetrating, right? Or I'll listen to a talk of Gurudev. How much do I really remember it? How much is it really striking my heart? How much is it really activating me to get up and do something, based on what I heard, right? Because my mental space is too cluttered with so many other things. So, but if we can clear that, right? And there's that famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Jnane Prayasha Mudapasyanamanta Eva, very key verse in our line. Give up everything that you know, right? Give up everything that you think you know. Give it all up. Leave some room. Open up some space to receive, higher revelation, higher vision, and so on. So now these first two verses are like clearing away the negative side, pointing out the things we need to remove. And then going on to the third verse, then we are going into the positive side. Now you've cleaned out the dirt. Now you can build your beautiful temple in the heart. So, utsahan nishchaya darya tat tat karma pravartanat sango tyagat satovrte shadbir bhakti prasidyati. So this is listing 6 favorable qualities, qualities which will nourish and support and help the development of devotion. And we can also add, that this is generally what is being emphasized in Krishna consciousness and in the cultivation of bhakti. Our gurus are always emphasizing the positive side, the cultivation of the positive side, and thereby the negative will be automatically cleared away. And so I think we can say, Rupa Goswami has put those 2 verses first, dealing with pointing out the negative, and it's not that we are focusing on that more, but it's simply helping us to have some awareness that this is our condition and we need to remove these things, right? And in the cultivation of pure devotion, we don't want to mix everything up, right? But we want to approach the Lord with a clean heart, right? And we don't want to pretend to be on a higher platform. We don't want to imagine that we're on a higher platform than we are, because how can we make progress from such a position? And so having some healthy self-awareness of our condition, that helps us, right, very much to move forward in a genuine way. And so this line of presentation is always followed by our gurus, and Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtakam does the same thing, right? The Cheto Darpana Marjanam, first clean the mirror of the heart, right? So this importance of cleansing, it's always put first. But it doesn't mean that that's the main focus. The main focus is actually the cultivation of the positive side. And that's what's being listed in this verse 3 of Upadeśāmṛta. So enthusiasm, utsaha, a wonderful quality. Then conviction, firm faith, conviction, confidence on the path. Then perseverance, right? This determination or patience, it's also put sometimes as patience to go on, because it is a long road. It is not a journey of 1 or 2 days, it is a journey of lifetime. So we have to prepare for a long journey ahead. Then tat karma pravartana, engaging in favorable activities, following all of the practices that are supporting our devotional life. Then sango tyaga, to give up bad association, and then also to follow the conduct of the sadhus. We could also say having good association. So bhakti is nourished by these 6 qualities. Okay, can go on to verse number 4. And this, before we started our meeting today, I was reflecting on this verse and just how wonderful it is, that one perspective I had on this verse, which I don't think I had before, was that Rupa Goswami is emphasizing the importance of having affectionate relationships with the devotees. That's really the main takeaway from this verse, that we need that. We need that to progress in our devotional life. We need to have some affectionate exchange with other Vaishnavas, other practitioners. And there's one place where Gurudev is speaking about this point, and it's recorded, I believe, in Revealed Truth. And he's saying that, the material environment is so strong, and to try and practice and progress on our own is very difficult and can be very dry, right? If we're trying to do it on our own. But when we are practicing with the association of other devotees with some mood of affection, that gives us so much strength, actually. It gives us so much strength and enthusiasm to go on. But alone is is very, very difficult. And so the importance of having affectionate exchanges, this is very nourishing, very important part of our development in spiritual life. And I was also reflecting on how, you know, our Gurudev emphasized so much these points of Trinada, peace, unichena, right? Humility, tolerance, respect, which Mahaprabhu mentions in his Shikshashtakam, right? Trinada, peace, unichena. And I was reflecting how those points are not directly mentioned in Upadeśāmṛta, but they are implied, right? That is something that is implied, right? Because if we are going to have some loving, harmonious, affection exchange, then these qualities will automatically be in the background of humility, tolerance, and respect. So that is implied here and also in other verses, but especially here we can say. So the verse, Dadati pratigranati guyam akyati prichati bhunkte bhajayate chaiva shadvidam priti lakshanam. Giving and accepting gifts, discussing and inquiring about confidential matters, and giving and partaking of foods are the 6 characteristics of affection. Very wonderful. So, you know, in all of these exchanges, there's, you know, we can also say there's an exchange of energy, right? And so there's also some awareness here, right? That, and this is something, as I recall, Srila Swami Maharaj in his purport to this verse, he mentions that with whomever we have this type of exchange, we are also exchanging energy with them. And so for that reason, we'll try to be careful about, you know, with whom we have this type of exchange with. And, you know, even in the world, generally, there's some awareness, you know, like this one, bhunkte bhajayate, like giving food, receiving food. You know, like I think in all traditional cultures, they have some expression, right? Like, you know, I won't break bread at his table, you know, like I won't eat at the same table as that person, you know, like there's some type of awareness, like you don't want to eat food with your enemy, you know, or someone who's not your real friend, you know, that there's some type of sense of that, like there's some intimacy in that, like eating together. There's some intimacy, some energy exchange, and there's some flow of goodwill. And so you want to save that, you know, for those with whom you want to have that type of exchange with, because it's not just the external aspect, but there's a subtle exchange that's taking place as well. Then discussing and inquiring about confidential matters, that's an important one, you know, because to be able to open our heart to another Vaishnava and express our doubts and difficulties, that's powerful. That's something that will support our progress in a very powerful way, you know. If we have that type of Vaishnava, we have that type of closeness with and confidence in, that is so helpful for us to fully open our heart, because, you know, those cobwebs in our heart and those doubts and difficulties, they can't be cleared unless the sun shines on them. And so if we can do that with the Vaishnava we trust, and that's very potent. I remember sometimes that I've told this story before, but when I was in Ukraine once, this one devotee girl, she opened up about this, and she said, and with some emotion, she was saying that, you know, I know I'm not making any progress, she said, because I don't have anyone like that in my life, she said. Just like, you know, just kind of like, you know, bore her soul open for everyone, you know, in the room. Just very raw. And there's no one like that in my life. I have no Vaishnava in my life like that with whom I can really open up to and open my heart to. And she said, I know that's why I'm not making any progress. And it really touched me in a really deep way that, she had this type of awareness, and she felt the importance of that. She felt, and I have no doubt that Krishna has answered her prayer and given her that person. There may be times in my experience, Krishna always gives us someone, even if it's just one person. And there may be some periods in our life when we're not able to do that, but it is temporary. And so if we don't have that person, we can pray to Guru and Garanga, please give me that person. Give me that person with whom I can open my heart to and receive some nourishment, and clarity for moving forward in my spiritual life. So it's very wonderful verse and very relevant and real, right? It's very on the ground kind of verse, relevant to our daily life of progress, having affectionate exchanges with the devotees. Okay, we can go on to verse number 5. Okay. Krishniti yasya giritam manasa jyeta dikshasti ched pranati vischa bhajantam isham shushushaya bhajana vigyam ananyam anya nindari shunya hridam ipsita sangha labdya. Oh, and for those of you who came in a bit late, just so you have some context, we're just having an overview of all the verses, well, as you can see, because it's been a while since we've had our Upadeśāmṛta classes. Okay, so here we are at verse number 5. Honor within the mind those who chant Krishna's name. Honor with obeisance those who are initiated and serve the Lord. And honor with service those who are expert in bhajan, exclusive and at heart free from criticizing others, knowing them to be the most desirable association. So this verse is, we can say the general idea in this verse is that we have some sense of discrimination, but not discrimination in a negative sense, discrimination in a positive sense, some awareness, that every practitioner, every Vaishnava, every person is at a different level, and we will, and it may just be in a subtle way, we will interact a little differently with everyone, right? According to their progress, according to their stage of advancement. If we give too much, then that's not helpful for them. That may feed their ego and inflate their opinion of themselves. And it also won't be helpful for us, because what will we get from that? Do they have anything genuine to give us, right? We are giving them honor, wanting to receive their mercy, but what is the quality of the mercy that they can give us, right? So we need to have some awareness of that, and ultimately, what does respect mean? Because respect may be something formal. Sometimes we may just show respect to someone for the sake of, social harmony. But what we're speaking about really is, investing our faith in someone, substantially. That's what's being said here. So how much of our faith and our heart are we investing in different Vaishnavas? We want to be careful about that, and it should be dependent upon, their level of advancement and how much they can genuinely help us in our spiritual progress. So, and some, and is mentioned here, some we may manasadriyata, we can honor them within the mind, right? We have honor for everyone actually, because everyone is a child of God, everyone's a servant of God, everyone has Krishna in their heart, and everyone has the potential for a life of divine service. So we can honor everyone from that perspective, but it may just be a mental respect. It may not be appropriate for us to show or demonstrate so much external respect, or to invest our, what to speak of investing our faith and our heart in that person. And then what is the ultimate expression of respect? It's giving our life, giving our heart, right? So the most elevated Vaishnavas, we want to offer our service to them. We want to give our life to them and sincerely try to serve them. And that will be of great benefit for our spiritual life. And I always like to remember this point here, that it's interesting that Rupa Goswami, when he's describing the highest level Vaishnava, he describes them with this quality: a heart free from criticizing others. Nindadi shunya hridam. Right. Their heart is free. Their heart is devoid of any tendency to criticize others. Ninda means criticism. They have no tendency to see fault in others. This is one of the hallmark qualities of a true Vaishnava, that they don't get any pleasure out of criticizing others, right? Sometimes some of us may feel we get some relish, right, in analyzing the faults of others. It's a human tendency. But this is a hallmark of the real Vaishnava. It is actually painful for them to dissect the fault, to look at the faults of others. They don't get any joy out of that. They don't want to see that. There's no juice in that for them, like the hallmark of like a gossip session is like analyzing, because there's some pleasure that comes out of discussing this person did that person did that, and this, right? So it's like just the opposite of the Vaishnava tendency. The Vaishnava does not want to see those things, or just doesn't see those things. And if they have to see them, it is with the pained heart, with the sorrowful heart. And so it's interesting, that Rupa Goswami particularly mentions that quality. And we can also say this is also associated with the spirit of non-enviousness. They have no envy, right? This is also important. This is related. They have no envy, and so they don't enjoy criticizing others. They don't want to criticize others. They only want to think good of others. So that is a very nice meditation. Okay, so we can go on to verse number 6, and this is also related to verse number 6, right? Because this is emphasizing the importance of overlooking external faults in the Vaishnavas. Jishte swabhava janiter vapushascha dosher na prakitatvam iha bhakta janasya pashyat gangamba samna kalu budbudafena pankar brahma dravatvam apagachati nidadharmai. Do not consider devotees in this world to be mundane as a result of observing faults produced by their nature or in their body. The water of the Ganges never loses its nature as liquid spirit because of bubbles, foam, and mud, all of which are natural in water. So, one thing we can say here is that, and we need to be able to distinguish between these things, is that there are spiritual faults and there are material faults, right? And we need to have some clarity about that, right? Because we don't want to criticize an authentic Vaishnava because of some material faults that they have. Those are superficial, right? Someone may have some bad habits, or someone may, speak or dress funny or whatever it may be, may have some not very nice habit too. But those are ultimately external faults. Those are material faults. And so we should not criticize the Vaishnavas for that. And so the analogy is given that the water of the Ganges may superficially have some impurity, but those with spiritual vision understand that is a superficial material fault. The spiritual potency of the Ganges is still there. And welcome Krishnan Jani Didi, who's also joined us. And then by spiritual fault, we can relate that to what we discussed earlier, the spirit of envy, right? Or the tendency to criticize and fault find. So these are spiritual faults, things that will actually hold us back in a substantial way. So I'm just trying to think of some examples. One simple example, someone may not be so clean. Someone may be a little dirty, right? In the way that they dress or the way that they live, right? And that's something that's easy to criticize. Oh, they're very dirty, It's very easy to criticize, but that's a material fault. That's a superficial fault. Of course, we may not like going over to their house. We may not go to the house because it may bother us, but we're not going to judge them for that. We're not going to criticize them for that. It's a superficial thing. That's just a very simple example. May be more serious. Someone may have an addiction. That can be harder to be non-judgmental about. Someone may be a Vaishnava, but they may struggle with some addiction, smoking or drinking, right? But that ultimately is also an external fault. That is some material habit which they're not able to let go of, but they will become free eventually. Of course, we may decide to distance ourselves from someone who has some particular habit if it affects us, but we won't judge them for that. We won't criticize them for that. We'll keep our mood of appreciation, and then we will not compromise our own progress in devotion in that way. Gurudev, one thing he used to say so many times, we heard him say, that, if we feel some uncertainty about some Vaishnava, we can give our dandavat from a distance, right? We can from a distance, but we will give respect. We will have appreciation, but we may just do it at a distance. But the important thing is keeping that inner mood of appreciation. And sometimes that requires some space, right? Okay, we can go on to verse number 7. So here we are. This is one of the most famous verses of Upadeśāmṛta. Syat Krishna Nama Charitadi Siti. Syat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapya Vidya. Pito Patapta Rasanasya Na Rochikanu. Kintvadarad Anudinam Kalusaiva Jushta. Swadvi Pramad Bhavati Tadgada Mulahanche. The sugar candy of Krishna's names, pastimes, and so forth is not relishable to a tongue severely afflicted by the jaundice of ignorance. Alas! Certainly, however, when it is daily honored with faith, this candy gradually becomes sweet and eradicates the disease. So this disease of jaundice. I've never had it, but there are those who have had it. It causes sweet to taste bitter. Right? It's a disease of the liver. And you may eat something sweet, but it tastes bitter. But then in Ayurveda, there is this remedy of rock candy, right? It's supposed to stimulate the bile or something like that and helps to cure the disease. And so you take this rock candy, which is very sweet, to help cure the disease. And in the beginning, it tastes very bitter, but you continue taking it, and gradually as the healing goes on, then you begin to be able to taste the sweetness of that rock candy. And so Rupa Goswami is using this analogy, right, for the holy name, that because of the disease of ignorance, of mundanity, we cannot taste the sweetness, the true divine sweetness of the holy name of Krishna. But by taking that medicine of the holy name, honoring that holy name, trying to serve the holy name regularly in our practice, then gradually our recovery will take place and we will be able to taste the sweetness that is actually there. So it is a very encouraging verse to continue. And the sweetness will come out, the disease will be cured. Okay, we can go on to verse number 8. Tanama rupa charitari sukirtananu smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya chishtan brajet anuragi jananugami kalam nayeda kilam vidyupadesha sadam. Engage the tongue and mind in the gradual process of complete glorification and constant remembrance of Krishna's names, forms, pastimes, and so forth. Reside in Braja and spend all your time as a follower of those who have deep attachment to Krishna. This is the essence of all instruction. So, right, there's been this gradual development, right, in the advices of Upadeśāmṛta. And, you know, we started at this very basic level of trying to control your belly, trying to control your genitals, trying to control your mind. We started at this very basic level. And now we've reached this much higher level, right? This is advice for someone who is approaching the Siddha stage, the stage of perfection in devotion. And so now this higher advice is being given, right, to live in the Lord's divine abode and to take, you know, to engage in, you know, full remembrance of the Lord and his names and take shelter of the Vaishnava. So, you know, we're at a much higher stage here. And welcome Ananta Shesh, and see who's also joined us. So yes, I mean, you know, one takeaway from here for us, right? Because we may look at this and say, okay, this isn't exactly relevant. You know, I'm not at that stage of, you know, living in Vrindavan. And by Vrindavan, we mean that plane of consciousness, not just, oh, I can go hop on a plane and go to Vrindavan, but, you know, to actually reside in Vrindavan. We may think, well, I'm not ready for that, you know, but one takeaway that is relevant for us is this word kramena, gradual, that there is a process, a step-by-step process of development, right? And that is something to remember, right, as we go on with our practicing life. And it is very encouraging, right, that it is a long process, it is a gradual process, and we do have many stages that we have to go through. And we want to go through them in a proper way. We don't want to skip any lessons, right? So we're happy to go on at whatever stage we're at. We may be in kindergarten, but we're genuinely in kindergarten. You know, we're not pretending that we're high school students, you know, but we are, or PhD students, right? We are happily kindergarten students. We are aware of that. And we know there are many other classes coming up, and we will reach there in good time, right? Under proper guidance. So that is one encouraging point about this verse. And then also the importance, one thing we can see too, consistently throughout Upadeśāmṛta, is that the importance of taking shelter, right? That is pointed out in multiple verses. So tad anuragi jana anugami, right? So even at this high level, the practitioner has reached entrance into Vrindavan, there also one is taking shelter of the Vaishnava. That is something that will never change. We always want to have shelter. Okay, we can go on to verse number 9, and this is where we left off. And our timing is perfect, which is coming to the end of our time. Vaikunta janito vadamadupodi tatrapira sotsavad vrindaranya mudara pani ramana tatrapi govardhana Radha Kunda Mihapi Gokulapate Prema Mripta Plavana Puryad Asya Virajato Giritate Sevam Viveki Naka. So now again we've entered this higher plane, right? And now Rupa Goswami is giving an overview of the gradation within the spiritual sky and different abodes of the Lord. So different service planes of the Lord, abodes of the Lord's divine play, you can also say. So higher than Vaikuntha is Mathura, where Krishna took birth. Higher therein is Vrindavan, where Krishna enjoys the rasa dance. Higher therein is Govardhan, where Krishna plays amorously. And higher than Govardhan is Radha Kund, where the nectar of Krishna's prem overflows. Would any wise soul not serve Radha Kund at the base of Govardhan Hill? So there's development in the rasa, right? And we were discussing this in our last meeting, right? Development in relationship with the Lord, development in the intensity of love, loving exchange with the Lord. That's what's being charted in a sense here. That in each of these abodes, there's some gradual development in the rasa and the loving connection, exchange with the Lord. And another thing which I was reflecting on just before we started was that, you know, like, where does Upadeśāmṛta ultimately take us in its conclusion? To the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani. So in these last 3 verses, 9, 10, and 11, this is what's being emphasized. You know, what is the supreme position of Srimati Radharani, and Radha Dasyam, right? The service of Srimati Radharani. This is our highest goal. And so her glories are being emphasized in these last 3 verses of Upadeśāmṛta. And so this is this is an important theme in the Rupa Nuga line, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the importance of position of Srimati Radharani and our goal of ultimately taking shelter of her, right? Not the direct approach to Krishna, but ultimately our interest, our greatest interest is in her service. So Radha Dasyam, you know, we can also say that is the conclusion of Upadeśāmṛta, the service of Srimati Radharani. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much more in this verse, but I don't know if maybe that's okay for now. But yes, the science of rasa, right? That's what's being indicated in that 9th verse. Should we go through 10? And then do you think we should go through 10 now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. It is 10 for me. 10 p.m. That's the thing. But
Thanks
okay.
for doing this, Vishaka Didi.
Oh, it's a privilege, Prabhu. I'm so grateful to be able to do this. Okay. Okay, we'll do this. Let's have a quick overview. Karmi bhyo parito had, so verse 10. Karmi bhya parito hare priyatya vyaktim yayor jnaninas tebhyo jnan vimukta bhakti padama premaika nishtastata tebhyastha pashupal pankaja drishas tabhyopi saradika prishta tadvadiyam tadya sarasitam nashrayat ka. So in the previous verse, verse 9, right, there's some analysis of different planes of service, right, in different abodes of the Lord. And here there's an analysis of different devotees, right, and different levels of devotion to the Lord. And, this is a sensitive subject matter, and it's something to be approached with caution, right, because it's not that, this is something to be done in this type of arrogant mood of, oh, this devotee is better than that devotee, or this devotee is less than that devotee. This devotee is not as important as that devotee. That type of mood has to be thrown out of the window, right? But this presentation is given for the purpose of some clarity of understanding what is the gradation of devotion. It doesn't mean that all Vaishnavas, all devotees are not to be honored and deeply appreciated, that they're not all worshipable. And Chaitanya Charitamrita gives this helpful phrase, tatasta vichar, right? Means impartial analysis. And it's mentioned that, every devotee actually feels that their service to the Lord is perfect. They're not feeling that, oh, I got the short end of the stick. My service isn't that important. My devotion isn't that valuable. No devotee, no real devotee feels like that. They're all fully satisfied and fulfilled in their particular service to the Lord. However, some analysis can be made according to tatasta vichar, impartial assessment. And that is helpful for our understanding. But it's not to put us in a place of judgment or criticism or diminishing some devotees over others, right? That's not the idea. So it is a sensitive subject matter. So we'll read this translation. Jnanis are known to be more dear in all respects to Krishna than karmis. Devotees completely free from jnana are more dear than jnanis, and devotees fixed exclusively in prema are more dear than devotees completely free. The lotus-eyed gopis are more dear than them, and Śrī Radhika is even more dear than the gopis. This lake of hers is similarly dear to Krishna, but any fortunate soul not take shelter there. So these stages of devotion, right? Karma, Misha, and this is an analysis that is discussed in other places, right? Like Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Ramananda Samvad, and other places. Kamishra Bhakti, devotion mixed with the tendency for karma, right? The tendency to want to gain things of this world, right? Someone may have some genuine spark of devotion and they are worshiping the Lord, but it is mixed, right? They also want to be, healthy, wealthy, wise, and we're all mixed with all these things, right? In our level, of course. So that is one type of devotion, karma mishra bhakti. And so then this verse is saying that that jnana mishra bhakti that is a little higher than Karma Mishra Bhakti. And so Jnana Mishra Bhakti means devotion, but mixed with some tendency for renunciation, the aspiration for liberation, right? Those things are not natural to the devotional mood. Right? And there's still some selfish tendency there in the desire for spiritual knowledge or for liberation. It has its place in our progress, but ultimately it is not required. It has no place in our relationship with the Lord. So there's Karma Mishra Bhakti, devotion mixed with the tendency for karma, material attainment. Jnana Mishra Bhakti, devotion mixed with the tendency for knowledge, liberation, these things, renunciation. Then higher than that are those who are fixed in love, right? Fixed in prema, who are free from the tendency of jnana, free from calculative. That's another way we can frame all of this. The calculative, karmis and jnanis, they both have some calculation in their approach to the Lord, that I will get this or get that. I will get some material benefit or I'll get some spiritual benefit. That's all a type of calculation. So then higher than that is those who are free from that type of calculation. And they are approaching the Lord with the spirit of pure natural affection. Then there are also different stages in that, right? There's a more kind of reverential, formal type of devotion, which you'll find, for example, in Vaikuntha. But then higher than that, there is the free, natural, spontaneous love that you find in Vrindavan. Automatic love, natural love for the Lord, free of any restrictions, formalities. And amongst all of those, the gopis, their love is the most elevated. And then Radharani, Shri Radhika, she has the highest place amongst them. So this is a brief overview of that verse. And you can go to verse 11. So this is the last verse of Śrī Upadeśāmṛta. Krishnasya chai pranaya vasati prayasi vyopi radha kundam chasya munibir abitas tajig eva yadai yat prishter apyalam asulabam kim punar bhakti bhajam tat premedam sakridapi sadasnatur avishkarote. Sri Radha is the highest object of Sri Krishna's love above all his other lovers. In all respects, her lake has also been established as such by the sages. This lake bestows upon those who bathe within it only once prema that is extremely difficult to attain, even for those who are dear to Krishna, let alone for practitioners of bhakti. So again, as I was saying, this is like the concluding expression of Upadeśāmṛta, glorifying Srimati Radharani and her divine kunda, which is an extension of herself. And then this last part, it's a little tricky, right? It's because it's saying that the message is framed in a little bit of a cryptic way. It's saying that one who can bathe within this Radha Kund even once, they can attain the highest type of prema, right? And so it's easy to then think, I must go and bathe in Radha Kund and I'll get that type of devotion, that type of prema. But then it also says that that prema is difficult. That type of prema, that highest type of prema, is difficult even for those who are dear to Krishna, those who already are established on some pure platform of devotion for the Lord, have a relationship with Krishna. It is difficult even for them, to have this type of prema, right? It's difficult for them to be able to bathe in Radha Kund. And so there's some, there's also some, caution given there, some awareness that, this is not an easy thing, And so then it's concluding, what to speak of practitioners like ourselves, we have very far to go. And there's a very, let me find it now. This is one of my favorite quotes of Saraswati Thakur, where he's referring to this verse. Let me see if I can find it. And he's speaking on this point, like, what does it actually mean to bathe in Radha Kund? Gaudiya, it's on Gaudiya Darsham, published it there. Because, right, ultimately everything is a plane of consciousness. Here it is. Found the page here. Here it is. So this is a quote from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I have taken bath in Radha Kund. I took a dip in Radha Kund. I am a lump of flesh and blood. I am my wife's maintainer. I am a sannyasi. I am a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. Thinking in any of these ways does not give the qualification to bathe in Radha Kund. So it's a plane of consciousness. What does it mean to bathe in Radha Kund? One must have attained some particular level of consciousness. And then he continues here, what to speak of such materialistic conceptions? If we are filled with the conception of awe and reverence, we cannot bathe in Radha Kund. So how high is the standard? How high is the standard? What to speak of having these material ideas, even if one is fixed in, say, Vaikuntha Bhakti, right? One has Vishnu Bhakti, and they are attached to this type of reverential, formal mood of devotion. They also cannot bathe in Radha Kund. So, so how high is the standard? And I'm reminded of that one verse of Raghunath Das Goswami, right, where he's saying that, if someone is too attached to the mood of, awe and reverence and all of this reverential mood of devotion, they will be thrown down to Vaikuntha. They cannot have entrance into Vrindavan, right? Such high things, Of course, we're like children discussing these topics, but we were given some idea, right, of how high is the standard. And it is not a light thing. It is not a cheap thing to approach the Lord and his beloved in their divine plane of service, divine play. It is not a light thing, but how high is the plane? How high is the standard? We can only worship and adore all of these things, try to serve all of these things, try to understand them in some way and worship them and love them. We can do that. We can try to do that. Okay, well, I'm really happy we could do that. We could go through these 11 verses. Thanks for the push, Nanda Krishna. And yeah, so Yeah, so next week I'm traveling now to Japan, and next week will be a lot of programs, and then the time zone is also makes things a lot harder there. So next week I won't be able to hold any meetings. Things are too busy. Then the week after, we'll have to maybe I'll do like one meeting for Europe or one for America. I don't know. We can work something out. Yeah, and then also I just wanted to share the news that I'm planning my summer travel, and I'll be traveling to Hungary, to UK, and also to Ireland, and also to USA as well. I'm coming to USA this summer. So I hope to meet some of you in person over these next few months. Yeah. All right.
Thank you for sharing the good news.
Look forward to seeing you, Ramanand, Peru. I'm very grateful for all of your good association. And it is getting quite late, but does anyone want to share any final words? And we didn't get to hear anything from Suvasini today. So, Gangli's asking, when am I in the US? I haven't booked my flight to America yet, but it'll be at the end of June. But as soon as I have my exact dates, and that's the only ticket I haven't booked yet. But as soon as I have it, then I'll share that with you. Okay, sorry, Suvasini, did you want to share any words of wisdom, insights?
No, Lady, no, I don't want to add anything. I don't have anything to add. Everything was beautifully explained by you. Very nice. And also good to go through the whole Upadeśāmṛta. It was nice also to have that. It's very nice. Yeah. And I'm also, happy to hear that, just Swami Shah messaged me earlier today that you're coming to Ireland in June. Happy to hear the news and look forward to meeting you.
Oh, yeah. Me too, Didi, me too. All right.
So wishing you a successful trip to Japan and good preaching programs there. And so by Gurudev's grace, I hope everything goes well.
Thank you so much, Didi. I need the blessings of all the Vaishnavas. That's our life currency, the grace of the Vaishnavas. So I'm very, very grateful to have that. Okay. Well, wish you all an inspired week ahead, and we'll be in touch and look forward to our next meeting. Jai Shri Gurudeva, Jai Shri Padam Gurudev, Jai Śrī Upadeśāmṛta, Jai Rupa Goswami Prabhu, and Jai all the Vaishnavas, Jai Suvasini Didi, Vaishnava Vrinda, Jai Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Jai Gaur Premanande, Hari Bol, Jai Gurudev.